I've been wandering near and far, pedaling my bike instead of using a car, and it don't look like I'll ever stop my wandering. My apologies to James Taylor, who wrote that song. My name is Willie Weir, and I'm a columnist for Adventure Cyclist magazine, and I also have been sponsored by Arnie Cycles for many years, who have provided me with some pretty amazing Rodriguez bicycles. And the folks there asked me to put together some images of the road as well as some travel tips, and hopefully you'll find both inspirational for an upcoming adventure that you're planning. Thanks a lot. I think the first thing you have to ask yourself is what kind of adventure you're looking at. And be honest with yourself. Are you looking for a physical adventure? Are you looking for a cultural adventure? Maybe it's a little of both, but a lot of times people favor one over the other. And that's this. Don't go to some country expecting to get to know the locals and to have these amazing cultural experiences and then decide to travel and pedal 100 miles a day. It just doesn't work out that way. Those kind of experiences only happen when you have the time for them. And I'll talk to so many people who end up, they love cycling and they want to do the miles. But the miles that you do every day, you have to leave time for the adventure to happen. So decide if you're going to have a physical adventure. I know people who have decided to go across the United States in 2.5 weeks, and they're doing 100, 200 miles a day. And that's great as long as what you decided to do was to have this physical adventure and something that puts your body against, you know, the road and your physical abilities. But then there's the other type of adventure, which is a little bit more relaxed. I mean, you're still going to get the workout, but you leave yourself the extra time during the day to be able to have somebody invite you to a wedding, to be able to have a family come to you and say, hey, we got a boat here, do you want to go fishing? I mean, it's happened to me many times. When you walk into most bike shops is that they're going to try to sell you the latest and the greatest. I mean, they're going to let you know that in 2004 they just came out with this great new derailleur that does everything that you could possibly do with a derailleur and that much more. And that's great. I mean, if you're a racer or you have access to a shop and you're going to, you know, it blows up on you and you can head right back to the shop, that's great. But for most travelers, you're going to be on the road for 3 months to 6 months. Sometimes you're going on a long journey. And the latest and the greatest is going to have problems. I guarantee it. So instead of doing this year's model, go to last year's model or the year before that. Ask the person at the bike shop, what has everybody used that they've liked a lot? And get that. Don't go for the latest and the greatest, not as a traveler. There is constantly this debate on what is the perfect touring bicycle. I mean, is it a light frame? Is it 27-inch wheels? Is it 700cc? And I've ridden a lot, and just many years ago I chose on more of a mountain bike frame with 26-inch wheels. And I don't have a huge space in my house to be able to have 17 bikes, so I pretty much just ride one. And for me, 26-inch mountain type bike that's a little bit has better measurements for touring, for me, is just the way I like to go. It gives me the versatility. No matter where it seems that you travel on this planet, you can find 26-inch wheels. The mountain bike craze kind of exploded across the entire globe all at the same time. So just about everywhere you go, you're going to find this size. In fact, when I was in the mountains of South Africa and Lesotho, I literally just blew out a tire. It absolutely just exploded on the bicycle. And I ended up limping down that mountain pass and going into a bike shop and I was able to buy the exact same brand Continental 26-inch tire that fit the tire that I was riding, so the rim that I was riding. And so that works for me. It's not going to work for everybody, but after many, many thousands of miles, that's just the kind of bike I like to ride. All the Rodriguez bikes that I have ridden have had S&S couplings, and these are couplings that are built into the frame that allow you to be able to take the frame apart. And most people use these to be able to take the bike apart. You can take a full-size bike and be able to get it in a smaller box to be able to take it on the airplane or be able to put it on a bus. It's very convenient. I ended up having one situation where it actually saved my bicycle. Kat and I were traveling in Albania, and we were robbed in a small village outside of Kukës. And they took our money, our passports. They didn't take our bicycles. We ended up back in a village with this family that we had stayed with the night before. And their two sons agreed that they'd take us to Tirana in their minivan if we paid for the gas, so that we could get new passports. And so that next morning we got up and we got our bicycles and we were putting them in the minivan, and we tried to put them out, but you could still see the bicycle seat. It was standing up a little bit above, and the one son looked at me, and he was speaking Italian, I was speaking Spanish, and he said, "We can't carry the bicycles in the car this way. The police will stop us, and believe me, they will take these bicycles. That's just the way it works in our country." And so I looked at him, I smiled, and I got out the wrench, and I undid the S&S couplings, took the bicycle in half, and it easily fit underneath the seat, and we were off to Tirana. So that's probably always going to be the most interesting way I use my S&S couplings, but they've really served me well. Inevitably, I get the question from somebody who says, how many tools, how much spare gear should I bring? And that is up to you, and everybody brings a different amount. But I would tell you this: it is better to make sure that everything on your bike is in great working condition before you leave, and take a lot less gear and stuff with you. A perfect example of this is my wife and I just finished traveling in Turkey, and we met a couple of young, enthusiastic Germans, 19 years old, and they were on a journey that they said that was going to be around the world. They had left from Germany, and they had talked to their mechanic ahead of time, and I think their mechanic was very, worried about their journey. I'm not sure how far their mechanic had ever traveled outside his home village, but what he ended up doing, and I'm not kidding you at all, is the one guy was traveling with 5 spare chains for his bicycle. That was just the beginning of the list of stuff that they were carrying on their bicycles. Ended up finding that their bikes, the gear on their bikes was 100 kilos per, 160 pounds worth of gear and spare parts to make sure that they made it across the world. The only problem is, they were breaking spokes like popcorn. Bing, 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 everywhere. And the one thing they didn't have was spare rims for their wheels. And so if they'd carried 80 pounds less worth of gear and had just invested more in their wheels, they would have had a much better adventure. But they'd already lost like a month just trying to deal with the fact that they'd carry way too much spare gear in order to make their adventure safe. For God's sake, before you leave on an adventure, make sure that you pack everything that you're going to take and pack it in your panniers, put it on your bicycle, and go for a bike ride. I mean, a weekend, even just around the block. I cannot tell you how many times I've met people on the road who are on a 3 to 6 month journey, and they never did that simple thing before they left. So they're somewhere in some post office FedExing or UPSing 10, 20 pounds worth of gear home because they never took the time to actually put it on their bikes before they left. The best time to find out that you have too much gear is when you're at home and you can throw that extra gear in your closet. It's a lot easier than doing it when you're on the road. I think a travel lesson that I learned many years ago and that has traveled with me all these years is always give before you take, and that includes taking photographs. I cannot tell you how many times I see tourists or other travelers out there and they get off their bus or they get off their bike or whatever, they run into a situation with their camera in front of their face shooting photos right off the bat. And I always look at those people, and sometimes I've had a chance to talk with them and say, you know, if somebody showed up at your doorstep and you opened the door, and when you did, somebody had a camera and immediately started taking pictures of you, what would be your reaction? Most of them, their reaction would probably want to punch that person in the face. And I said, well, why do you think that these people in this village, either in Romania or India or Africa, would feel any differently than you would there? Always take the time. And when I say give doesn't mean give pens or money or those things that a lot of times that travelers will do. Give of yourself. And that can be as simple as, I juggle. And so one of the things I do to entertain kids is juggle. But you can even just give your time by asking somebody how they're doing that day. Or if you don't speak the language, of at least smiling and paying attention to their kids. As you give, people will be willing to allow you to take something from them, the experience, your photographs, whatever. But it's just a great thing to remember, because when you're on the road and you see that perfect picture, it's so easy to want to rush in, and you'll find that the better experiences happen when you take the time to give first.